Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So you may have noticed my microphone quality has fallen off. This is because my previously good microphone doesn't seem to work anymore. So that's awesome. All my things dying on me. But anyway, on to the topic of the video. I am painting up the kill team. I don't even know how to pronounce this, the Elucidian Starstriders, and I will specifically be painting Elucia Vhane, the rogue traderess herself in this kit. Though I will be doing all of the other miniatures separately, it's just the only video I really got was of Madame Vhane. Anyway, so this is also sort of a proto unboxing, not what I usually do. And you can see my large awful ape hands are opening up the box there and extracting the contents. This is big content apparently. So it's pretty much par for the course for most of the new Kill Team sprue boxes. It's one sprue, a pretty neat and compact package with about 10 miniatures, which is, you know, pretty light on and nice for GW. It's just, yeah, still costs quite a bit for what you get, but they're high quality at any rate, and each one of those models is a distinct character, so still worth it in spite of, you know, GW prices. Anyway, if you're familiar with contemporary GW kits, you're probably familiar with what to expect. It's a obviously 3D sculpted miniature, nicely sliced up to be injection moldable. Anyway, on to painting. So, well, I'm not, obviously, I mentioned previously, I'm not going to do the rest of the crew on camera. I will be demonstrating how I did the bases, because this is using my, I guess it's become standard method for urban basing. So to start with, I am doing an overall coat of German grey, just to establish an undertone for everything. And you'll also notice that I went ahead and already glued some scatter on. So what I used are Julie bricks from that I got at a model show a while ago, and some plastic I-beams, which I have sort of sanded down and sort of angled into the base like they're standing on or around a pile of collapsed rubble. Oh, anyway, on to the next color. So now I'm doing an overbrush of a medium gray, so that would be, in this case, a neutral gray from Vallejo, to establish the overall mid-tone while leaving the German gray in the deepest recesses. You'll also note I put some skulls, like, liberally covering the base, but that's just, you know, I'll paint those later. I don't really do those as part of the initial base work. I just do this generally to get most of the colors down, and all of the like fairly messy base work just flat out of the way, so I don't have to worry about it later. And finally, once the midtones are down, giving the entire thing an all-over dry brush with, I think, a Vallejo Sky Grey, which is effectively a light grey or slightly dark white. Just, you know, get that 3-color basing done, and that's a lot of the hard work on basing done. And just, you know, paint. If it goes over the miniature, it doesn't matter. It's all going to get painted over in the fullness of time. So just a note on the plastic I-beams, I am painting them a metallic color here, but I basically just leave them half done and do the actual finishing work for the I-beams at the final stages, because it just seemed like too much of a pain to do it at this stage. So, I accidentally turned off my light there. So, on to painting Vhane herself. So, I'm going to follow the box art reasonably closely, though after attempting that weird non-metallic metal that I've seen on the box art for the trim of the cloaks and skirts, I am not going to attempt that on her because I could not make it look good on any of the other miniatures in the set. So I'm just going to keep it a bit more simple and do my best with my scale 75s and see what kind of results I can achieve. Alright, to start with, going to lay some base coats down as per usual. So the boot color for the boots, I'm aiming to be black with blue highlights. So what I'm doing here is I'm painting the highlight color, fully base coating it over the miniature, and we'll shade that down so that it is a more of a subtle highlight. You'll see what it'll look like in a bit. I just realized I can see my reflection in the glass. It's not so bad though. Anyway, so I'm painting the skirt like bright red, which is a bit of a slight variation on the box art, but I was quite happy to do that. And her corset armor piece thing, that's going to be a burgundy red, so aiming for like red leather. Obviously, for a lot of these base coats, it will need multiple thin coats in order to get that final even coverage before you can actually work with it in terms of getting the shades and highlights down. So for the veil and a lot of her other like clothing details, I'm just painting that a flat grey of some kind, or more of a cold grey, so a sort of a bluish light grey. And that will get shaded down with black and then highlighted back up to get our overall colors. So just wanted to make it look more like, you know, linen or fine cloth. And the feathers in her cap, I'm going to paint a green similar to that on the box art. So again, just establishing those base coats, and in the feathers case, we'll highlight up from there. And as mentioned, I'm doing the trim and design on the, I don't know, skirt and jackets. In her case, I'd color which contrasts nicely with the red of the skirt. So that's going to be that same bluish white that or grey that I was using for the other linen and cloth details. Again, because my fat fingers and poor eyes, I haven't quite got it right. So what I'm doing is I'm just cleaning up the initial application to hit all of the raised detail on the skirt, and I'm just going to go over it again with that white color once I'm satisfied with the that I've reapplied the shade into all of the necessary areas. And actually, yeah, I'm starting some of the shading work actually. So what I do with these miniatures is, if I'm working with scale 75s directly, I'll paint on the shades and highlights directly rather than using a wash in almost all circumstances. Well, actually, no, in a lot of them. Essentially, when there's large flat areas that there needs to be some color gradient applied to it, I'll sketch in my shades and highlights quite manually. And here are the boots. As mentioned, I'm making up a wash with glaze medium and black, and I am just painting that all over the boots, and that's going to take 2 or 3 passes, but when it finishes drying, it's going to look like black leather with just a very subtle shade of blue showing through. And I ended up using that same wash to actually wash all of the white cloth details as well, because it was a similar enough color and would need well, not a similar enough color, just a similar. I wanted to achieve a similar effect that a black wash on white would have achieved. So generally, I was pretty happy with how that turned out. And as you can see, I'm still sketching in the shades, you know, on the skirt. I'm just going to keep noodling away at that until I basically achieve what I want. Then I basically think I admitted defeat at this stage and said I'd go over and finish off the highlighting again once I was satisfied with the shading and highlighting on the skirt itself. And of course, the skulls and the base get just a generic bone color painted on, and we'll go through a basic wash with a homemade wash brown made with glaze medium, and then a highlight, a relayer the base coat, and a highlight later on. And after many, many, many coats, the skulls are finally mostly there. And as I'm doing this, I'm also just, going over, relayering details where I feel they need it, and going back when I feel the work hasn't quite been up to standard. So this isn't a very prescriptive linear process like you may have seen in GW tutorials. It's very, I'll paint until I like the look of it, which is kind of good for my method. I use this word a lot, noodling, until I'm satisfied with the result. You should definitely not be afraid to go back over some work you've previously done if you feel that it's not up to standard, because I'm almost guarantee you that if you just take a step back and redo something, and if you're careful with your brushwork, you can probably make it more to your liking. Yep, and you just saw me put a wash on the deep red, so that'll give us a bit of shade, which we'll relayer. Anyway, so for the feathers. Now, since there isn't a lot of sculpted detail, what I'm doing is I'm just sketching little mid-tone lines along with the natural curve of the feathers. So this is a fairly contrasting color from the original base coat, which in effect is our shade coat here. So what I'm going to do is build this up, and it'll give the impression of texture and hairs like coming out of the stalk of the feather. If that is even the stem, I don't even know if it's the right word. Either way, it'll actually look a bit more like hairs rather than just a solid piece of plastic, which is the effect we want to achieve after all. And as mentioned, that basic brown wash on the skulls goes on here. And if you take a look, you can actually see what the boots sort of look like once the wash is dried. That they come across as a lot darker, which is basically what we're aiming for. You want a bluish leather, a bluish black leather. So you want it to be mostly black with a suggestion of blue showing through, which is, I think, what I achieved in this case. And we'll only accentuate that with further highlights. And of course, working away at the feathers, just back and forth, building up that color slowly, bit by bit. Working way up till a mid-tone's mostly done, and then we'll get to a highlight in a bit. There it is. There's the highlight. Yep. If there's one thing that painting does teach you is that patience is definitely a virtue. That it'll take a lot of slow and kind of tedious work to get these sorts of effects, but once they happen, they certainly pop. And obviously there I'm just very carefully sketching in the stem of the feather in just a generic tan color. And we'll do a few little highlights on that just to give it a subtle suggestion of a bit of shape. And there's me admiring my handiwork, because quite frankly, I was impressed myself. I impressed myself with how well those feathers came out. Anyway, plenty more to do though, because the miniature is still not quite in the looking good yet stage. Alright, so the flesh is going on as well, so just being careful with it. So nothing really fancy here, considering there is very little actual exposed flesh on the miniature thanks to the veil and all of the other doodads. So yeah, it's just pretty much a matter of that one eye slot in the veil and her fingers. Yeah, pretty simple, so I'm not gonna do too much in terms of fancy work with the flesh. So the flesh was mostly done with a just base coat, one mid-tone, one highlight layer, simple, a very simple process. And now for some of just the other random details, I'm just painting the sword cane or rapier cane. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest. I'm just going to paint it a basic black and put some highlighting on it. Oh yeah, to contradict myself, yeah, that's me working on the flesh there. So what I'm doing there is just washing in some red to get some deep shadows. Most of it's going to be picked up again with and cleaned up with a subsequent, you know, mid-tone and layer. So I'm going to do her pistol holster in another red leather, so just still very much in the base coating stages. As you can see, I'm reapplying the base coats for the sword scabbard. For her hair, I'm going to do grey, but there's only a small amount of it showing on her back, so I'm just going to quickly base coat that in, then hit it with a wash. And as usual, I'm going to put the wash on a couple of other things that I need to be shaded, just in order to save time, mostly. And now that the wash I applied on the flesh is mostly dry, I'm working on layering up the skin. I ended up making some mess on the cloth arm wrap things in the process, so I'll basically end up going over them again just to neaten them up and, you know, start again from scratch. And that looks like final highlights mostly done. Again, there's not a lot of flesh to actually highlight on this miniature, as the only real exposed high points are the fingers, so just painting some knuckle bones and that's it. So now that the wash that I applied previously is mostly dry, I am just going through and relayering a bunch of things. Like for example on the holster, which you saw a moment ago, and on the veil, which I had to touch up after getting the flesh down, because I got a fair bit on the actual veil itself. So we just got to re-establish our black lining on the things we had to repaint, which is, you know, just simply done with some washes. Again, homemade mix using glazed medium and a black paint. Nothing too fancy, but I find it gives a generally better and less weirdly tacky result than the GW products. And of course, now that we have mostly shaded some of the other things, we're going to reapply some colors just to try and bring back some of that color gradient. Okay, now that the skirt is well and truly done now comes the difficult task of repainting in the trim details on the skirt. Again, this is just, I found this really hard to do, just in order to avoid messing up my previous work on the skirt itself. Just lots of fine detail work, and this is where having a fine tipped and controllable brush like a Winsor & Newton really does pay dividends. I definitely need to exercise some patience here, as a lot of this detail was very hard to fill out without messing up my previous work on the red skirt underneath it. So yeah, lots of just taking your time with a fine tip brush and just getting that color established. No, there is no real substitute for patience with these sorts of jobs. And now that we've got the colors down, I'm just going to use that black wash I prepared earlier to just run it over the grey and hopefully let it go a little bit onto the red underneath it, just to get a little bit of a black line between the two colors. And of course, we'll just try and paint in some very loose highlights there. So we're approaching that point of the miniature where we're just hitting all of the little bits and pieces and details that don't really fit in with the larger pieces of color on it. So just, yeah, this is a particular like feature or problem, depending on how you look at it with GW miniatures. There's just lots of tiny little bits of, ephemera just hanging around which need to be addressed and painted up. Yeah, so just, little skulls, little bits hanging off the belt, that sort of thing. And those, like dozens of other little details that just need to be considered in your final paint job. And as usual, once the details have been base coated, they need to be washed, or shaded manually if you're a sadist, and just uh, achieving the usual shade, base, and highlight for all of the little bits all over the place. And of course, there are those very little things which can be missed, like the stitching on the front of the, I don't know what to call it, the leather armor, chest armor, I guess. But yeah. Okay, so on to highlights. So for the boots, I'm just going back to the base coat of the boot, as in that really dark blue color, and I'm just hitting a few areas where I think there should be more shades. Correction, more highlights. So generally the buckles, the heel, the toe, and the I don't know, that front crease bit of the boot. And just like everything else, we're on to the stage of layering in our colors. So that includes for the cloth there. So I'm being very careful to try and get the layers reestablished for the veil and the I don't know, arm warmer bits. And then, yeah, moving on to highlighting. So this is a highlight, I think, of almost pure white. So I'm just trying to be very careful and just touch the edges of the cloth. You don't want to go insane with highlights. We just want to do enough to make it look good and really pick out the detail. Obviously, we'll re-establish the midtone for the pattern on the skirt. I'm just also going to be a bit loose with it, trying to just get an impression of shade going from light to dark as best I can on such a relatively shallow bit of detail. And finally, sketching in highlights, just with a fine tip brush, almost pure white, just hitting the sharpest edges of the design as best I can across the entire design. Just to give a slight impression of detail. I don't want to get too fancy on this one because like I said, I couldn't really replicate the box art due to my own lack of skill. Okay, onto the metallics. So as per my usual method, I start by base coating everything with a fairly dark metal just to act as that surface for the metallics to stick on, to provide basically an underpaint for the various other types of metal. Since we're mostly going to be painting on gold, virtually all of this metal, like darker gunmetalish color, will be covered up in the final result. But for now, we're just getting that surface to work with established. And now that all of the metal has been established, as I mentioned, we're putting on the gold, or in some cases a mixture of copper and gold. So you notice how just goes the lighter metallic like copper and gold color just goes quite easily straight over the gunmetal with like one or two coats. It just makes the entire process so much easier. Should have done this years ago. Now, I didn't do it on camera, but I did wash the golds with basically a darker red color just to get some shade. And now I'm painting a mid-tone, slightly lighter gold than the base coat over it, just to re-establish the gold color, to get that shimmering gold look back. And this includes just being very carefully trying to pick out the very topmost raised areas of the gold trimming. Ooh, sorry, adjusting the camera there because it was misbehaving. But yeah, adjusting the re-establishing that just that gold sheen to make it look like a precious metal rather than it's dull and hasn't been cleaned. And I'm just also using a slightly lighter gold color to hit some of the sharper areas. I'm not going to do a highlight all the way up to a silver metallic color. I just always find that never quite goes on right. I've just never been able to make it work. I don't know why. And of course, just some minor highlights on the, I don't know what it is, backpack atmosphere generator, I suspect, or something along those lines. Seems that everybody in the crew's wearing one or a variant of one, so I suspect that's what it is, but I don't know. Anyway, doesn't really matter too much. And I think we're also moving on to the final details. So there I'm just putting some white in the, I think it's the cybernetics eyepiece, just in preparation for the glaze I'm going to put over it. What am I doing there? Oh yeah, there's also a couple of brass casings on the concrete, I guess. So I'm just hitting those as well. Anyway, so for the final metallic bits, that sort of like gem thing in her on her belly, I'm painting with a what's it called? Soulstone to get that, you know, metallic gem kind of look. Though I'm a bit iffy as to whether the product's any good at all. And obviously there I'm just dotting in the eye as best I can, because I was a bit stupid here, and I just used my rougher metallics brushes, which have been through a lot, so the eye work wasn't as precise as it could have been. But it looks okay for what it is, and it's very difficult to see it anyway, thanks to the sculpt of the miniature. And I think we're pretty much on the home stretch. I'm just doing some cleanup, getting that gem as close to right as I can, and cleaning up a few parts where the metallics have gone out of bounds just by layering a shade over them in general. Well, not a shade, a darker paint. And obviously, of course, as per my usual style, I like pure black rimmed bases. I'm a very GW 5th edition guy in terms of looks. So there we go, we are done. Overall, I think the paint job quality is merely high tabletop and not hugely impressive, but it'll look decent on the table. It'll look great on the tabletop. A lot of effort's gone in, and I do like some of the subtleties of the shading. Yeah, overall, I think like I do love how GW does more. Lately, has been doing more characterful miniatures. I like, and for things that aren't part of their main, you know, like product lines, like say Fuel Space Marines. Like I'm definitely getting the Imperial Navy breaches and probably the Kroot to go with them kill teams once they release those as separate boxes, if they release those as separate boxes, because I do like the small character sets. And yeah, but this one definitely oozes character. It's like a rogue trader and her retinue. That's basically the one of the archetype characters of 40k. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Overall, I am happy with the progress on this box set, and yeah, lots of very distinct painting projects, all in one box set. So if just, you know, painting highly detailed miniatures is what you're after, the Elucidian Starstriders is definitely pretty good value for money, but if you want something a bit more pedestrian, probably stay away from this box, as they're all fairly individually characterful miniatures. Anyway, next video, or one of the upcoming videos, is going to be the other half of the box, the Master-at-Arms and the Voidsman, who I'm painting in a broadly similar scheme, so it'll be more of a traditional kind of army-based paint job. Though obviously aiming for a higher quality than mid-tabletop. So yeah, we'll see how we go with that. Anyway, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope you get something out of this. If not, just, you know, a distraction or something to listen to while you're doing your own painting. So that wraps it up. I will see you later.